My wife asked for a divorce. I want everything except the daughter. My lawyer begged me to fight. I said, give it all to her. The courtroom went silent. At the final hearing, I signed everything over. She thought she won, until her lawyer screamed. All right, Reddit. 24 years of marriage, and it all ended after I found this on her phone. Not exactly how I pictured my midlife crisis starting, but here we are. Name's Elliot, 54 male. I'm a building inspector in Franklin County, Ohio. Been doing it for 28 years. My job is walking into structures that look solid and finding everything wrong that nobody wants to see. Sagging floor joists behind fresh drywall, mold spreading through walls. It was February. Cold enough that the windows had frost on the inside. I woke up around 2. I just needed water. I shuffled down the hallway in my socks. The kitchen was dark except for a blue glow from the table. Caroline was hunched over her phone, thumbs flying. She didn't hear me. The air smelled like that overpriced lavender face cream she'd started using ever since she fell into those Facebook groups about reinventing yourself. I paused in the hallway. Something about her looked wrong. Hunched forward like she was shielding that screen from imaginary eyes. The messages were bright enough to read from where I stood. Someone had written, "Can't wait to see your new place. You're going to look absolutely unstoppable." Then another, "Once you're free of the dead weight, the real Caroline can finally shine." Dead weight. Caroline smiled at her phone. I backed up without a sound, went to the bathroom, stared at my reflection. 54 years old, gray at the temples, and thinning on top. There was a tiredness around my eyes that sleep couldn't fix. The kind you get when you've been dealing with stuff for years, and it just piles up. She slipped back into bed 20 minutes later, phone face down. I lay there staring at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, I didn't confront her. I've watched too many people panic when you point at problems. They argue, deflect, slap spackle over the cracks and pretend that fixes anything. It never does. So I did what I always do when I find damage. I started documenting. Over the next few weeks, I watched Caroline the way I'd watch a questionable structure, looking for patterns, shifts, new behaviors that didn't match the woman I thought I knew. She'd started a home staging business about 10 months earlier. Furniture and decor rentals for houses going on the market, she'd explained. Just a few pieces here and there. Easy money. Temporary. I'd supported it because that's what you do after 24 years of marriage. You compromise. You tell yourself the small stuff doesn't matter. Temporary turned permanent real fast. The Afghan my mother had crocheted before she passed disappeared first. Forest green with cream stripes. Nothing valuable to anyone except me, but it had been draped over our couch for 15 years. Then the brass floor lamp I'd picked up at an estate sale back in 2009. Then the leather recliner I'd bought myself as a 40th birthday present. Then the dining room chairs I'd personally repaired after Jade spilled orange soda on them, tightening every bolt and sanding down the stains myself. One by one, piece by piece, our furniture started vanishing into Caroline's inventory. Each time I noticed something missing, she'd wave her hand and tell me it was temporary. At a client's house. Part of a staging job. Would be back soon. Soon never came. The living room developed gaps. Empty corners where stuff used to sit. Blank spaces on walls where pictures had been rearranged to hide the absence. Our good couch disappeared on a Saturday while Jade and I were at the hardware store picking up supplies for my truck. 3 hours we were gone. When we got back, some discount furniture store reject had taken its place. Beige fabric that already looked dirty. Jade stood in the doorway with her backpack slung over one shoulder, staring at the room like she'd walked into the wrong house. She was 15, a sophomore at Franklin High. She had her mother's sharp eyes and my stubborn streak. "So the couch just died, I guess," she said flatly. Caroline swept in behind us, iced coffee in hand from the expensive place downtown, grinning like she'd just closed a Fortune 500 deal. Told us the real couch was at a client's place. This one worked fine for now. Told us we worried too much about stuff that didn't matter. Jade caught my eye across the hollow room. I shook my head. Don't. Not worth it. She pressed her lips together and walked to her room without another word. Later that night, Jade knocked on my bedroom door. She had her laptop open. "Dad, I found something weird. Mom's been selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace under a different name." She turned the screen toward me. Listings for furniture I recognized. Our furniture. Prices that didn't match what Caroline claimed she was getting from clients. A side hustle inside the side hustle. "How long has this been going on?" Jade scrolled. "Oldest listing is 8 months ago." I took a photo of the screen with my phone. Added it to the folder I started keeping. The garage filled with tagged furniture and wrapped lamps and rolled rugs standing upright like they were lined up for inspection. I moved my tools to one corner, then finally out to a storage shed I bought secondhand off Craigslist for $300. My own workspace, pushed out by throw pillows and accent tables. But the furniture wasn't what got my attention. The bank statements were. I noticed the patterns while balancing our checkbook one evening. Something Caroline had stopped bothering with years ago. Money flowing out in weird chunks that didn't match normal spending. $600 here, $1,400 there. Charges from furniture wholesalers in Columbus that didn't match what I saw showing up in the garage. Deposits that should have been coming in from clients but weren't. More going out than coming back in month after month. Then the college fund statement arrived. It came on a Thursday. Thin envelope. Official letterhead from the investment company. We'd started that fund the month Jade was born. Back when we were young and optimistic and thought we could build something that would last. $30 a week at first. More when we could afford it. Birthday money from grandparents. Christmas bonuses. Tax refunds. 15 years of building something so our daughter wouldn't drown in student loans like we almost had. The balance was $8,000 lower than it should have been. My first thought was a computer error, a glitch in the system. Then I saw the transaction line, clean and precise. Transfer out, authorized by joint account holder. I called the investment company from my truck the next day, parked outside a condemned duplex I'd just failed for mold and electrical nightmares. The customer confirmed the transfer, authorized by Caroline Bowen. processed 3 months ago. I sat there for a long time after hanging up. $8,000 of our daughter's future spent on furniture that would end up in strangers' houses. And Caroline hadn't said a word. That evening, I found her in the kitchen with her phone. Always with the phone now. I set the statement on the counter between us. We need to talk about this. She barely glanced at it. It's temporary. The business needed cash to scale up. I'll pay it back. That's Jade's money. That's her $529. It's our money, technically. And Jade will be fine. She turned back to her phone, already done with the conversation. Kids figure it out. That's what student loans are for. That was it. End of conversation. She didn't even have the decency to look guilty. I picked up the statement, folded it carefully, and walked to the garage. Stood there in the dim light, and I understood something I should have understood years ago. Caroline wasn't building a business. She was building an exit strategy. And she was stripping our life for parts to fund it. I spent the next 6 weeks building a file. Not for revenge, because that's what I do. 28 years of writing reports that stand up to lawyers and insurance adjusters teaches you to record everything with precision. The bank statements went into a folder. Every transfer highlighted in yellow. Every withdrawal cross-referenced against garage inventory. The math didn't add up. Money was bleeding into somewhere I couldn't see. I found the storage unit by accident. A recurring charge on our joint credit card statement that I'd somehow never noticed before. $180 a month to a facility on the east side of town, out by the industrial parks where the city puts businesses it doesn't want visible from the highway. I drove past it one afternoon after a site inspection. Gray cinder block building, rusted fence, security cameras mounted on poles, pointing at nothing, probably disconnected years ago. I photographed the exterior, noted the date and time and address, added it to the growing folder. The real break came from Tony Mendez. Tony had been my best friend since high school. We'd survived prom disasters together, been each other's best man at weddings, sat together at his wife's funeral 3 years ago when cancer took her faster than anyone expected. He became a CPA instead of conquering anything, spent 30 years helping businesses not get eaten alive by the IRS, and people not get eaten alive by their own financial stupidity. We played poker every other Thursday at his house, just the two of us now that the other guys had moved away, or gotten divorced, or given up on friendship. I told him everything over cards and cold pizza in his basement, the same basement where we'd watched our kids grow up, celebrated promotions, and complained about setbacks. Tony listened without interrupting, which is how you know he's taking something seriously. When I finished, he set down his cards and leaned back. You want my professional opinion? That's why I'm telling you. She's either terrible at business, or she's hiding money somewhere. Or both. He picked up a pizza slice. My bet's on both. That storage unit is interesting. If she's running inventory through there without proper documentation, that's a tax issue. And if money's not showing up in accounts you can see, it's going somewhere you can't. Can you help me figure out where? Tony smiled. The smile of a guy who'd seen this kind of mess before and knew how it usually ended. I can tell you what to look for, and I can tell you exactly what paperwork to pull that she won't think to hide because most people don't know what auditors actually look at. He spent 2 hours teaching me how to read financial trails, which statements to request that would trigger automatic documentation, which discrepancies mattered to courts, and which ones were just sloppy bookkeeping, how to document everything. The storage unit is your smoking gun, Tony said, pointing at my notes. She's probably running inventory through there off the books. Cash transactions that never hit a bank account. Trades with other stagers. The kind of stuff that looks like normal business until the IRS decides to take a closer look. How do I prove that without access to her records? You don't have to prove it. You just have to document what you can see and let her prove what she can't explain. He pulled out a yellow legal pad and started sketching a diagram. Here's how business liability works in a divorce. If she takes sole ownership, she takes sole responsibility. Every debt, every obligation, every tax consequence. Most people hear ownership and think asset. They don't think about all the liability that comes with it. And her lawyer won't explain this to her? Tony laughed, but there was no humor in it. Her lawyer will explain whatever Caroline wants to hear, because that's what keeps clients happy. And Monica will tell her the lawyer is right, because Monica's never been wrong about anything in her life. What about the Facebook Marketplace stuff? The side account? Tony's eyebrows went up. She's running unreported income through a fake name? That's not just sloppy. That's tax evasion. If she's not reporting that income, she's building a problem that gets worse every year. He grabbed a napkin and started writing numbers. Even just 8 months of that is 25, 30 grand in unreported income. Keep it going another year, and you're looking at serious penalties. Maybe fraud charges if the IRS feels like making an example. He slid the napkin across the table. You don't have to prove any of this. You just have to make sure she owns it when the questions start. I pocketed the napkin and studied his diagram. The logic was simple. You couldn't trick someone into signing something that was properly disclosed, but you could absolutely let them trick themselves. You know where this is going, Tony said as I was leaving. Yeah. So what's the play? Drag her to court? Fight for every dollar? I'd been thinking about it for weeks. The answer was counterintuitive, but it was the only one that made sense. I'm going to let her have exactly what she's asking for. Tony raised an eyebrow. That sounds a lot like losing. Only if you don't read the fine print. Caroline asked for a divorce on a Sunday morning. She announced it over breakfast like she was reading a grocery list, and she wasn't alone. Her sister Monica was there too, which should have been my first clue that this was a coordinated attack. Monica was 3 years younger than Caroline, had been married twice, divorced twice, and somehow managed to walk away from both with the other guy's money and none of the blame. She collected alimony payments the way some people collect stamps. She had opinions about everything and expertise in nothing, and she looked at me across my own breakfast table like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. I want the house, Caroline said, calm as ice. Both vehicles, the business assets in full, and the retirement account split 50-50. I sipped my coffee, took my time, let the silence build until Monica started fidgeting in her seat. And Jade? Caroline waved her hand dismissively. You can have custody. I don't have time to deal with a teenager right now. The business is taking off and I need to focus. Monica nodded along. Caroline needs a clean break, a fresh start. You get it. And honestly, Monica added, leaning back with her coffee, Jade's at that difficult age anyway, all moody and dramatic. Caroline shouldn't have to deal with that on top of everything else. I understood perfectly. Our daughter wasn't worth fighting for. She was a piece of furniture that didn't match the new look Caroline was going for. That's when I noticed Jade standing in the hallway. I hadn't heard her come down the stairs. Her face was carefully blank, the way it got when she was trying not to show how much something hurt. She'd heard everything. Wow, Mom, she said, voice flat. Really feeling the love here? Caroline rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. This isn't about you. No, Jade said. I guess it isn't. She walked out the front door. The quiet click was somehow worse than any slam could have been. I looked at Caroline and Monica, two women who'd clearly spent weeks rehearsing this moment, planning their victory, dividing up the winnings before the fight even started. Okay, I said. Monica blinked. Okay, what? Okay, she can have it. The house, the cars, the business. I stood up and carried my coffee mug to the sink, taking my time. I'll call a lawyer tomorrow. The silence behind me was delicious. I could practically hear them recalculating, trying to figure out where the trap was. There had to be one, right? Nobody just gives up like that. That's unexpectedly reasonable, Caroline finally managed. I turned around and smiled. I'm a reasonable guy. I hired Wallace Braddock on Tony's recommendation. 62 years old, looked like somebody's favorite grandfather, and had the instincts of a shark. 35 years of family law in Franklin County. He knew every trick in the book because he'd written half of them himself. We met in his office, a cluttered room above a dry cleaner that smelled faintly of cleaning solvents and old paper. Legal books lined every wall. Files covered every surface. He listened to my story, reviewed my documentation without comment, and didn't say a word until I finished. So you want to give her almost everything she's asking for. Almost. Walk me through the almost. I laid it out. Caroline wanted sole ownership of the staging business and all associated assets. Fine. Let her have every lamp and throw pillow and questionable financial decision. She wanted the house. Also fine, with conditions. She wanted the retirement accounts split 50-50. That's where I drew the line. I've got 28 years into my pension. She's got maybe 5 years of random IRA contributions, most of which she's already rated for inventory. The math doesn't work for equal division, and any judge who looks at the numbers will see that. Braddock nodded, making notes. What else? My truck, my tools, full custody of Jade, with child support from Caroline since I'll be the primary parent, and the $8,000 she took from Jade's $529 gets offset against her share of home equity. That's not negotiable. Braddock made a note. Improper withdrawal from an educational account without the child's knowledge. That's strong. We can frame it as reimbursement rather than penalty. Easier for a judge to approve. What about the Facebook Marketplace sales? Braddock's eyes sharpened. Show me. I pulled out my phone, showed him Jade's screenshots. He scrolled through the listings, prices, dates. This is gold, he said. She's running unreported income through a fake name. If this comes up during an IRS inquiry, she's looking at fraud charges, not just back taxes. He handed the phone back. We don't mention this directly. We just make sure all her business records are part of the appendices. When someone eventually audits her, they'll find the gaps themselves. The house? She can have it, but there's a clause I need locked down tight. I leaned forward. She refinances within 90 days of the final decree to remove my name from the mortgage. If she can't qualify on her own credit, she sells. No extensions. No exceptions. I want that language bulletproof. Standard practice when one party retains the marital home. If she defaults on the refinancing deadline, you can petition the court to force a sale. What's her credit situation? Trashed. She's got vendor debt going back months that she hasn't paid. Business accounts and personal accounts mixed together like a blender. According to Tony, she's underreported income on at least 2 tax years, which means problems waiting to happen. None of which becomes your problem if she takes sole ownership. Exactly. Liability follows ownership. Braddock tapped his pen against the notepad. Her attorney is Camilla Holt. Young, aggressive, impatient. She'll want this settled fast to avoid prolonged discovery. They'll push for expedited mediation. Will they do forensic accounting? I'll suggest it's unnecessary, given how cooperative we're being. Holt will advise her client to skip the deep dive to save money and time. Caroline will agree because she's impatient, and Monica keeps telling her there's hidden money somewhere. And if they actually read the appendices? Braddock smiled. It wasn't warm. They won't. Holt bills hourly. She'll skim signature pages and trust that we're as eager to settle as they are. The detailed financial exhibits will be in Appendix C through F, properly labeled, fully disclosed, completely legal. If they choose not to read 200 pages of documentation, that's on them. The settlement locks in before the final hearing. We'll get signatures at mediation. Standard procedure. The final hearing is where the judge reviews everything, confirms both parties understand, and enters the agreement into the official record. He paused. That's when any attached exhibits become part of the permanent court record. Anything in those appendices gets officially acknowledged. I understood. The mediation was the trap. The courtroom was the reveal. You're not giving her the business, Braddock said. You're handing her a bomb with the timer already running. That's the idea. Caroline didn't go quietly. I'll give her credit for that. She had Monica in her ear and her pride on the line, and that combination made her dangerous. The first month was a flurry of legal motions. Camilla fired off demands like she was getting paid by the word, detailed asset inventories, financial disclosures, depositions scheduled and rescheduled again. Every document request designed to find the hidden fortune Monica had convinced Caroline I was sitting on somewhere. There was no hidden fortune. There was just a guy who'd worked the same job for 28 years and watched his wife spend everything else. Monica was everywhere during those months, coaching from the sidelines, filling Caroline's head with strategies she picked up from her own divorces. I heard through mutual friends that she was telling everyone who'd listen that I had secret accounts, that the real Garrett was finally being exposed for what he really was. Jade stayed with me at the apartment I'd rented. Small place, 2 bedrooms, thin walls, a view of a parking lot. I'd enrolled her at the high school in the new district, so she wouldn't have to bounce between her parents or deal with the drama at her old school, where everyone knew everyone's business. We developed routines in that little apartment. I made pancakes on Saturday mornings. She made spaghetti on Wednesday nights, recipes from YouTube videos. We didn't talk about her mother much. We didn't need to. The escalation came in April. Caroline filed an emergency motion claiming I'd wasted marital assets. Evidence, I sold my old fishing boat. 16-foot aluminum boat I'd bought used in 2011 for $2,000. Spent more fixing it over the years than it was ever worth. Sold it for $2,800 to fund the apartment deposit and first month's rent. Caroline claimed it was worth $15,000 and demanded I account for the $12,000 difference. Monica had apparently found a boat listing online for a similar model in pristine condition and decided that meant my rusted-out fishing tub was worth the same. The judge denied the motion in about 20 minutes. Braddock submitted the original purchase receipt, the repair invoices that totaled more than the purchase price, the listing showing what I'd actually sold it for, and 3 photos of the boat from the sale that showed rust spots and a patched hull. Her claim fell apart immediately, but she wasn't done. The woman I'd been married to for 24 years had apparently decided scorched earth was a solid strategy, and Monica was happy to keep handing her matches. A week after the boat motion failed, someone reported me to my employer claiming I'd been taking bribes to pass inspections. Anonymous tip to the county ethics hotline. Specific enough to trigger a formal investigation. Vague enough to be impossible to disprove without going through every file I'd touched in 3 years. The investigation took 2 weeks and found nothing, because there was nothing to find. I'd never taken a dime I didn't earn, never passed a building that didn't deserve to pass. But for those 2 weeks, I was on administrative leave, sitting in my apartment while strangers went through my work records, looking for dirt that didn't exist. When I got reinstated, my supervisor pulled me aside. Someone really doesn't like you, Garrett. The complaint was specific. Named 3 properties you inspected last year. Whoever filed this did their homework, or had access to my work calendar. He raised an eyebrow. Your wife? Soon to be ex-wife. Well, the complaint's been marked unfounded, but it's in your file now. Permanently. Braddock couldn't prove it was Monica, but the timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. Then Monica showed up at my apartment while I was at work. Jade was home, doing homework after school. She watched through the peephole as her aunt tried every door and window, rattling handles, peering through glass, taking photos of everything. 20 minutes of attempted entry, all captured on the building's security cameras. She didn't get in, Jade told me that night, but she really tried. At one point, she even tried your truck. The truck was locked, obviously, but she tried. Did you call the police? Jade shook her head. I thought about it, but then I figured the security footage of her trying to break in might be more useful than getting her arrested before she could really embarrass herself. I looked at my daughter, this 15-year-old kid, who'd somehow learned to think 3 moves ahead while her parents fell apart around her. When did you get so smart? Had to pick it up somewhere. Definitely wasn't from Mom's side. I sent the footage to Braddock the next morning. He added it to a file that was getting thicker every week. Leverage, he said. Breaking and entering is criminal. We saved this for when we need it. 3 weeks later, Camilla called to schedule settlement mediation. She wanted it fast. Caroline wanted it faster. They'd waived forensic accounting review, just like Braddock predicted, saying the expense and delay weren't necessary, given how cooperative Discovery had been. The mediation happened in late May. Caroline arrived dressed for war, all sharp angles and aggressive confidence. New suit, new haircut, new attitude that said she'd already won. Monica sat against the wall in a visitor chair, occasionally checking her phone like she had somewhere more important to be. Before we started, Monica leaned over to Caroline and said, loud enough for me to hear, "Make sure you get the retirement accounts. That's where he's got the real money stashed." Caroline nodded. Camilla says we'll get at least half. They had no idea what half of nothing looked like. They were about to find out. The mediator went through the standard disclaimers about the process being voluntary and the agreement being binding once signed. Nobody was really listening. Camilla reviewed the settlement agreement with the speed of someone who'd already declared victory in her head and was just going through the motions. Page after page, barely glancing at the text before flipping to the next. Sole ownership of business assets to Caroline, including all inventory, all accounts receivable, all accounts payable, and outstanding obligations. House to Caroline, with the 90-day refinancing clause buried in paragraph 47 of a 63-paragraph document. Retirement accounts split 82-18 in my favor after Braddock's careful negotiation. Full custody of Jade to me with minimal child support from Caroline. Caroline initialed where she was told to initial and signed where she was told to sign. Didn't ask questions. Didn't request clarification. Just scribbled her name with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was getting. My client is prepared to finalize, Holt announced. The financial exhibits are attached as Appendix C through F, Braddock said pleasantly. Full documentation as required by disclosure rules. 214 pages of supporting documentation. Holt waved her hand without looking up from her papers. We've reviewed the disclosures. They hadn't. I signed the settlement agreement. The mediator witnessed both signatures and stamped the document with the date and time. Settlement is executed, she announced. Final hearing is scheduled for June 14th. Judge Warren will review and enter the agreement into the record. Caroline smiled at me across the table. I smiled back, the smile of someone who knew what was waiting in those appendices. At the courtroom, Caroline sat at the opposite table with Camilla, still dressed for war, still radiating confidence. Monica was in the gallery, front row, ready to watch her sister's victory become official. Judge Warren was 60-something with gray hair and reading glasses. He reviewed the settlement paperwork. "This appears to be a comprehensive agreement," he said finally. "Both parties have signed. Before I enter this into the record, I want to confirm you both understand and accept these terms as written." Caroline nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Bowen?" "Yes, Your Honor." Braddock stood. "Your Honor, for the record, the financial exhibits attached as Appendix C through F are incorporated into this agreement. 214 pages of documentation regarding the business assets Mrs. Bowen is assuming sole ownership of." Judge Warren turned to Camilla. "Counsel, did you review these exhibits with your client before she signed?" The question hung in the air. Impossible to answer without either lying to the court or admitting she dropped the ball. Holt's face went pale. We reviewed the material disclosures, Your Honor. The appendices were extensive, and we relied on the summary documentation provided during discovery. That's not what I asked. Did you review the detailed financial exhibits with your client? Yes or no?" Holt couldn't answer. She couldn't say yes without perjuring herself. She couldn't say no without admitting malpractice on the record. "Your Honor," she finally managed, "my client signed an acknowledgement of receipt for all disclosed materials. The waiver of forensic accounting was a mutual decision to speed things along." "Mrs. Bowen," the judge interrupted, turning to Caroline, "are you aware that the business assets you're assuming include outstanding vendor obligations totaling $47,000? Caroline froze. "What? And storage facility fines of approximately $6,000? Camilla Holt grabbed her copy of the settlement, started flipping frantically toward the appendices she hadn't bothered to read. Her face went gray as she found them. "Your Honor," she started, "and that these exhibits include documentation suggesting unreported business income across multiple tax years that may warrant IRS inquiry." Monica was on her feet in the gallery. "This is fraud. This is entrapment. You can't." "Sit down," Judge Warren said. "You're not a party to these proceedings." Monica sat. Caroline turned to her lawyer, voice rising. "You said everything was fine. You told me we went through the disclosures. You said we didn't need the forensic accounting." Camilla's voice came out strangled. The appendices were extensive. We relied on opposing counsel's representations that the disclosures were routine. We made a judgment call to move faster." "This isn't what we agreed to," Holt snapped, voice rising sharply. She caught herself immediately, face flushing, but the damage was done. A lawyer losing her cool on the record. "Your Honor, I apologize, but this settlement was negotiated in good faith based on..." "Counselor," Judge Warren's voice was ice. "You waived forensic review. You signed acknowledgement of disclosed materials. Get yourself together." Braddock spoke calmly into the silence. "The appendices were properly labeled and fully disclosed. Opposing counsel had the same access we did. Their signed waiver is on file." Judge Warren looked at Camilla over his reading glasses. "Did you advise your client to waive detailed financial review of these business assets? Did your client sign an acknowledgement that she was assuming sole ownership and sole liability for all business assets and obligations as documented in these attached exhibits?" "Yes, Your Honor, but we didn't realize..." "The exhibits are clearly labeled. The disclosure was complete. The waiver was signed." Judge Warren set down the papers. "Counsel, the time to realize was before your client signed." Caroline's voice cracked. "Garrett, you knew about this. You knew, and you let me..." "I disclosed everything," I said. "It's all in the appendices. You signed acknowledging receipt of full financial documentation." "I didn't know what was in them." "That's not my problem. Your lawyer advised you to skip the detailed review. You agreed. You wanted sole ownership? You got it." Judge Warren folded his hands. "I'm entering this settlement into the record as signed. The financial exhibits raise questions that may warrant examination by appropriate authorities, and I'm noting that for the record." He looked at Caroline. "Mrs. Bowen, you've assumed sole ownership of these business assets and their associated liabilities. You've also agreed to refinance within 90 days or list the property for sale. The clause is enforceable as written. Do you understand?" Caroline looked like she was going to be sick. Monica was gripping the gallery railing hard. Yes, Your Honor. Agreement is entered." The gavel came down. Camilla was already gathering her papers, face tight, already thinking about damage control. Caroline sat frozen, staring at nothing, watching her victory turn to dust. Monica rushed forward from the gallery. "We're going to appeal this. We're going to sue. This is entrapment. Ma'am, sit down or I'll have you removed." Judge Warren said. "You can't just ambush someone with 200 pages of..." "Bailiff." The bailiff took 2 steps toward Monica. She sat. "The agreement is signed, witnessed, and entered," Braddock said pleasantly. "Appeals require legal grounds. Failure to read documents that were properly disclosed isn't grounds for appeal. It's malpractice." He paused. "And that's a conversation Mrs. Bowen should have with her attorney, not with us." I stood up, straightened my jacket. Jade was waiting in the hallway. She'd insisted on being there even though she couldn't be in the room. I walked out into the June afternoon and found her sitting on a bench, scrolling her phone like this was any other ordinary day. "How'd it go?" "Your mother got everything she wanted." Jade looked up, studied my face. A slow smile crept across hers. "That bad for her, huh?" "Yeah, that bad." We walked to the truck together. My truck, legally and officially mine. Behind us, I could hear Monica's muffled fury through the courtroom doors. I opened the passenger door for her. Jade climbed in, buckled her seatbelt, and looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her eyes for months. Hope. "You know what, Dad? I think we came out ahead. We also got your $8,000 back." She blinked. "Wait, seriously?" "Offset against her equity share. It's in the decree. Your $529 is whole again." Jade stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. A real laugh. The first one I'd heard from her in months. "You absolute legend." The aftermath played out month by month. Caroline couldn't refinance the house. Her credit was destroyed by the business debt, the late vendor payments, the collection actions that had started piling up. She tried 3 different mortgage brokers. Each one ran her credit and said no thanks. The mortgage company didn't care about explanations or promises, or the story Monica had helped her put together about how none of this was really her fault. Day 87, she tried to call me. Left a voicemail asking if we could work something out, extend the deadline, figure something out. I didn't call back. Day 89, Braddock filed the petition. The court ordered the sale. She had 30 days to list. She sold in a soft market, in a hurry, to the first buyer who made an offer. After the mortgage payoff, the outstanding liens, the property taxes she'd let slide, the $8,000 offset for Jade's $529, and the agent's commission, she walked away with barely enough for first and last month's rent on an apartment in a neighborhood she used to drive through with her doors locked. The house she'd wanted so badly, the house she'd stripped our home to get, belonged to strangers within 4 months of the final hearing. The storage facility terminated her lease after a fire marshal inspection turned up multiple violations. Commercial inventory in a space not rated for commercial use. Blocked fire exits, not enough sprinklers. The fines alone would have been brutal, but that wasn't the worst part. Most of her remaining inventory was seized by creditors before she could sell it off. Furniture she'd spent our money on. Furniture that was supposed to be the foundation of her empire. Hauled away in trucks by people she owed money to. The staging business that was supposed to fund her new life collapsed in 3 months. Her last client was a realtor named Hendricks, who'd used her twice before. He called me out of the blue one afternoon, asking if I knew where Caroline was. She'd taken a $5,000 deposit for a staging job and never showed up. Ghosted him completely. I'm not her keeper anymore, I told him, but you might want to talk to a lawyer. Word gets around in tight-knit industries. People talk, and what they were saying about Caroline wasn't flattering. Then the IRS letters started arriving. Caroline mentioned it to Jade during one of their rare phone calls. Notices about unreported income, requests for documentation she couldn't provide because her records were a disaster. She asked if I knew any accountants who'd work cheap, Jade told me over Wednesday spaghetti. I told her I didn't. The unreported income, the questionable deductions, the mixed-up accounts that made everything impossible to untangle without professional help she couldn't afford. Monica let Caroline move into her guest room. That lasted 6 weeks before the screaming started. I didn't gloat, but I felt peace when I heard Caroline had finally started looking for a real job with a regular paycheck. Jade finished sophomore year at her new school with a 3.6 GPA. Made the honor roll for the first time since middle school. We still made pancakes on Saturday mornings. The apartment got a new stove eventually. The pancakes turned out better. One evening, 8 months after the hearing, Jade looked up from her homework. Do you think Mom gets it yet? That she lost? I thought about it. The house she'd wanted, now owned by strangers. The business that was supposed to set her free, now just debt and regret. The daughter she'd dismissed as a complication, now doing great without her. I don't think she'll ever get it. That's how people like your mother work. They just blame everyone else when it falls apart. Sometimes the best thing you can do is step back and let people have exactly what they asked for. They usually don't want it once they get it. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.